Do you have a dream car? Mine is the Lucid Air. Are you intrigued by electric vehicles? The Lucid Air EV has been called the best driving car in the world. And the Lucid Air Sapphire is certifiably the fastest production car in the world. Listen to Lucid Driver Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts or at luciddriver.buzzsprout.com.
Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyofacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul. And this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am delighted to welcome Daniel Edward to the Joy of Cruising podcast. Daniel shared with me, I started cruising with Royal Caribbean, where I was cruise director staff, then promoted to activities manager. I was first a cruise director over there in 2018. After the pandemic, I returned to cruising with Holland America Line, where I was a cruise and travel director on their grand voyages. I circumnavigated Australia and New Zealand twice, South America once, cruised to Antarctica and up the Amazon River, as well as the usual Mediterranean and Northern Europe itinerary. Over the years of cruising, I've also written for newspapers and magazines. My first job was as a finance journalist at the Daily Mail, and I've just been elected to the board of the British Guild of Travel Writers. After leaving the cruise and travel director role at Holland America, I decided to launch a travel podcast called Destination Unlocked, where I'm joined by a local expert in each episode to unlock their part of the world or travel style for my listeners. Welcome, Daniel, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's great to be here.
It is great to meet you virtually. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing very well, thank you. Home from a cruise literally 5 days ago.
Oh, I can't wait to ask you about that because that cruise that you were on is on my bucket list. But before
I can see why.
Yep. Before we talk about your exciting life at sea, provide us some personal background. Where you're from, where do you live now, background before cruising, anything you are willing to share.
So I'm from London in the UK. That's where I grew up. And apart from when I went to university, that's where I've lived my whole life. So I studied at Cambridge, which is only about an hour from London. And then London-based, I live northwest London for those people that are more familiar with their way around London. And I'm about half an hour into the city centre, which is great for me because I love the theatre, and the centre of London just has everything you could possibly need for shows and museums and the river as well. Anytime I can spend central London, I love it. But I also love that I leave central London for home because I don't think I could live right in the center of London. A little bit too busy for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in terms of my background, I started as a journalist. So my very first job was as a finance journalist at the Daily Mail, which is a big English language newspaper. And I wanted to break out of finance and do something a little bit more fun. And that was how I accidentally stumbled on cruising.
Well, we certainly want to ask you, how did that accidentally happen? But before we do, so you were on Seabourn over Christmas. I said that's on my bucket list. Prior to the beginning of the year, I had a luxury cruise ship on my bucket list. So I did go on one in 25, and that was Explorer Journeys. But in researching that, I certainly learned a lot about Seabourn. Give us the details of that luxury cruise.
Oh my gosh. I have been spoiled now. And in a way, I wish I'd never been spoiled because you can't unsee what you've seen. It was so lovely. The the size of the ship is great. So the ship that I was on, which was the Seabourn Encore, is a 600 capacity ship, which is really comfortable. It's not teeny tiny. It's certainly no mega ship. It's that comfortable in between where everybody knows everybody's names. You see everybody and you have your own space. And I think that was the ideal thing with the Seabourn ship, that the design of the ship is such that there's so much lounge space. There's space around the pool. I never saw anybody in need of a seat who didn't get one. All of the lounges have space with great views, comfortable seating. And then the thing which really sets it off, and I think it's difficult to find anybody who would disagree with this, is the crew. The team on board are just absolutely top notch, from the housekeeping team to the bar staff in the restaurant team. Everybody knows your name. Everybody knows what you want before you've even realized that you want it. And the thing that I like so much about it is it's low key. Sometimes luxury can feel put on, it can feel stuffy, it can feel pretentious, and there was none of that. It was so relaxed, it was so human, it was just so right.
Now, what was the circumstance that you were on Seabourn? Was it just a leisure trip, or did you have were you working in some fashion?
Yeah, so
How did you choose Seabourn?
well, it chose me and I chose it. It was we lent into each other. So I had for the last few years been the Grand Voyage cruise director at Holland America Line.
Uh-huh.
And Holland America Line and Seabourn at a company level are the same company. They're
Right.
very different brands,
Right.
but they are the same company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was on board the Seabourn ship because I've never been on a Seabourn ship before, and hoping to move into working alongside that brand as well. So it would be foolish to think about working with a brand and not understand what that brand does. So that was the reason I took that opportunity to be there.
Okay. So you are still working on ships. You're not just doing your podcast, which we'll get to later, but you are still a ship employee.
Yeah, so I don't work on the ships anymore, but still working with cruise lines. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So let's go way back, Daniel. Talk about your very first cruise. When, what ship, first impressions?
My very first cruise was when I was 17, and I didn't like it. It was the Voyager of the Seas, which was Royal Caribbean. Amazing ship, great facilities. We were on a 1 week cruise around the Med to celebrate my granddad's birthday. It had everything going for it. Everything was right. And then we hit a storm,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have my sea legs.
Oh,
And
wow.
I turned green. And I think people are amazed that I have spent so much time over the last decade on board ships, because after that cruise, I said, you are never seeing me on one of these things again in my life. My main memory of it, apart from the storm,
What changed?
what changed? Do you know what changed was finance writing. I didn't want to be stuck on the finance desk forever. And as much as I was very appreciative for an amazing first job, I really landed on my feet when it came to what I was doing. But because I didn't have a journalism degree, I wasn't able to move to a different desk. And so
Okay.
I wanted to write about something which was more interesting and more fun. Wasn't able to do it within the confines of where I was at. And I thought, I'm going to break out for 6 months, and I'm just going to do something fun for 6 months just to get it out of my system. And then I'm going to see where my career goes. And so I actually auditioned to be Mickey Mouse at Euro Disney, and I didn't get it. And I was quite disappointed that I didn't get it. So off the back of not getting Mickey Mouse, I then thought, well, where else can you get something similar, where the whole purpose of what you're doing is to give people a smile, to add something to their day, at a time of year which is already special for them. And it then seemed obvious that cruise was that place. And so I bit the bullet and I thought I'm gonna do it. And I went back to Royal Caribbean because that was all I knew. That was, for me, that was the cruise industry.
So that first cruise for Royal Caribbean, not the very first cruise, not Voyage of the Seas, but that was the first time since you turned green?
Yeah.
Wow. And you didn't have any trepidation about getting back on the ocean?
I don't know what I thought, to be honest. I think there's a lot of mind over matter with these things. And I think I just told myself, you're going to love it. And I did love it. I knew I wanted to do something different. I just wanted to break out of where I was at and give things a go and have a bit of fun. And it ticked all of those boxes. I suppose it helped that the job was so me. I was so at home in the role. The team I was with was wonderful. That was, looking back, still one of my absolute favorite contracts. And we were in fairly protected waters as well. I was doing the whole of my first contract, which was just under 7 months. I was from Galveston, Texas, and I was going 1 week round the Caribbean this way, 1 week round the Caribbean that way. And we went to the same ports pretty much every other week. We didn't really hit bad weather for the entire contract. It was fantastic for somebody who feels seasick. It's nice to be in protected waters, and that gave me the bug. I didn't expect it at all.
Uh-huh. What was your role on that first contract?
I started as cruise director's staff, so I was doing basically anything anybody asked me to. Move a chair here, move a chair there, stand on the door of this event, stand on the door of that event, host trivia, stand on the gangway. And actually, the funny thing is, as I've continued in my career on the cruise ships, those things never go away. You're always moving a chair here, moving a chair there, and standing on a door.
Never go away, no matter what level you ascend to.
Exactly. What changes is you understand why you're doing it.
Okay. So talk about your progression at Royal Caribbean to various roles and on various ships and ultimately to cruise director.
Yeah, so I did a couple of contracts as cruise director's staff, which was that sort of entry-level beginner role. And I really loved it. I was so relaxed in that role. I was getting to host great events and with wonderful people, having a lot of fun. And it got to that point where I decided to leave. I thought, right, I've had the fun. I did what I needed to do. Great. Tick that one off. And I went home and I missed it. And that's very dangerous. And so I went back. And when I went back, I was then promoted to the assistant cruise director position, which at Royal they call the activities manager. And that was such a good role. It was my first ever management role.
Uh-huh.
And I learned a lot in that role. And Royal did very good, actually, in terms of training. That's something where I think they stand out. They train people very well. And so before you ever actually lead a team, you've gone through some training programs for what to expect and some little tips and tricks. And they created this amazing program to sort of give the activities managers some context of what does it actually mean to design a program of activities when you've got 4,500 people, and they're the smaller ships now for Royal, but when you've got that many people on board, you're not trying to entertain one person. You're trying to entertain 4,500 people, because you can't move them all together because there's no venue on board that takes 4,500 people. So you've got to think about, how do you split people? How do you have enough for this one person that they're going to be excited and interested all day? But how do you have enough for this other one person who's going to have a different journey through the day, but still has to be just as engaged and interested? And that really played to my interests of sort of playing with data a little bit, playing with creativity, playing with new ideas. And there's a lot of feedback that comes in on board cruise ships. And so being open to hearing what people are saying and then acting on it means that you're going to make amazing cruises. And so I did that for a couple of years, and I was mainly doing the Europe season in the summer out of Southampton, and mainly doing Caribbean in the winters. And then 2018 was the first time that I was a cruise director. And I loved the step up. I loved the change. One of the things that I really appreciate about the cruise director role is you're managing the managers at that point. And anybody who's worked in management, I think, will understand the difference and how nice that is, because you're managing people who have already said, I'm committing to this. This is a career for me. This is something that means something to me. And so it's so much easier because you're not dealing with some of those challenges that we do face on cruise ships, where some of the newer members of staff are still in that vacation mind. It's an unusual workplace. You are on vacation, but you're on someone else's vacation, and you have to remember that.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So as a trainee, not a trainee, but as a activities manager, ultimately a trainee for a cruise director, what ships were you on?
I was on Navigator of the Seas the most. That seemed to be my home ship. And I was on Independence of the Seas. I think they were the two that I did as the activities manager.
Talk about your ascension to cruise director. What was the ship? How did you feel? Were you anxious at all? Or were you just ready to just kind of make your mark?
A bit of both. I think the thing with the cruise director transition is assuming things go well and assuming it's a fairly standard process, you're already doing the job by the time you're doing the job. And so if you're working with a good cruise director before you, they've already started handing things over to you and preparing you for what's going to come. The assistant cruise director role or the activities manager role does all of the same stuff. They just have someone else to lean on when they're unsure. And the best part of that transition is that if you've got somebody who trusts you, then bit by bit, they're handing that over to you and saying, run with it, see how it feels. And so I was very lucky with that. I had some really great cruise directors in my run up to taking on the role. And
can you name a couple?
Paddy Cudworth, he's no longer a cruise director, but he was probably the single most influential cruise director at Royal for me. Great friend, and gave really good, honest advice. Others I enjoyed for different reasons. The one who was immediately before my first time as cruise director was Jamie Fentiman, and it was great to work with him because he was very different from me in terms of style, in terms of energy. And so I learned a lot in terms of picking up little tricks there to that I could copy into my own performance. Rob McNally, big in the UK market.
Now, speaking of style, do you consider yourself an extrovert?
Probably. I would say I'm a pseudo extrovert or a pseudo introvert sometimes. You've got to be extroverted, I think, in these sorts of roles, in that I thrive on people. I love being with people. That said, I'm not the heart and soul of the party. If you find me at a party, I'm more likely to be quietly sitting at the corner having a conversation with someone than on the dance floor in the middle of some sort of mosh pit dance circle.
Okay. Yeah, because I just assumed that and it is probably a faulty assumption, but it's easy to assume that all cruise directors are off the chart extroverts, you know?
I think there are probably more that are than aren't, but I think some of the best aren't, because there's something very powerful about being able to focus on other people and not yourself. And so maybe the distinction, rather than extrovert introvert, is about how much you're able to focus that energy on other people and how much of it is about attention seeking for yourself. And I think the very best cruise directors share the attention with others and realize that essentially they've got a giant spotlight that they're holding through a cruise, and they can shine it on whoever they want. The best ones shine it on other people.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. A cruise director seems like a role where you, as they say, burn the candle on both ends. Is it as exhausting as it appears?
Oh, yeah.
We'll be right back.
The Joy Vacation by Dream Vacations invites you to join us on a bucket list adventure to Africa. We're going to Kenya and Egypt for 14 days, April 10th through April 24th, 2027. A week in Kenya, including safaris, and a week in Egypt, including the pyramids and a 4-day Nile River cruise. This adventure includes air from the U.S., all transfers, all accommodations, private tours, and many meals. $5,000 to $5,500, depending on air, per person. Double occupancy. Only $250 per person deposit due at booking. The remainder is not due until late 2026. For a detailed itinerary, online brochure, and to book, email me at pthornton, THORNTON, pthornton @dreamvacations.com.
Oh, yeah. It's,
No hesitation.
no hesitation. It's an exhausting role. It's the sort of role that you only do because you love doing it. Because it's long hours. People aren't always on their best behavior when they're on their vacations. And so you might think that it's easy. It's not always easy. In the moments where it's really good, it's really easy because you're having a great time. You're doing something where you feel really comfortable and relaxed, and you're helping people enjoy themselves on vacation. So in that sense, it's an absolute blessing. But things that I've found challenging with the role, apart from the hours themselves, because they really are long hours, is I don't really like drunk people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done spring break cruises. It's so out of my comfort zone, and that is exhausting because you've still got to give the same energy, the same performance. You've still got to host people in the way that they're expecting to be hosted, but you might not feel comfortable in that environment. Now, as I grew through my career, I moved to a cruise line where I felt more naturally comfortable anyway. And I don't tend to have that many spring breakers, but it's stuff like that where you have to put other people first. And sometimes that's the exhausting part. It's that sort of emotional draining side of it where you might not be feeling that great that day. Nobody cares. That's not their bother. They're on their vacation. They want to enjoy it. And so you've got to step up to the mark there.
So you mentioned that you moved to a cruise line where it's less likely, you didn't use these words, but I'll paraphrase, it's less likely to run into drunk people. Talk about, I trust you are referring to Holland America Line. So talk about your movement to Holland America and your progression. Similarly, on that line, you were a cruise and travel director on Grand Voyages, for instance. I mean, that's ultimately what you became. So talk about that progression.
Yeah, so the pandemic sort of helped me there. I left Royal Caribbean 2019, just before the pandemic. So I wasn't on board the ships during the pandemic, which I'm very grateful for. And
so it was just luck.
It was pure good luck for me.
Happenstance.
Yeah,
okay.
Pure good luck. And I had made a bit of a transition for myself into travel writing. I always kept up the writing, even when I was doing the finance writing. What I would do is I would do a contract on board the cruise ship. I would then go back to write about finance in my vacation. Then I'd go back to the cruise ship. So I never stopped writing. But after a period of time, it became obvious to me that I've now got enough writing experience and enough travel experience that I could probably put the two together here and do some travel writing. And so the first person to give me a shot with that was the editor of a cruise magazine in the UK called World of Cruising. And off the back of a first commission there, which was a piece all about how to pick the right shore excursions for your cruise, they then commissioned me a second piece. And then they commissioned me the next piece. And then off the back of that, I started going out to other publications and saying, hey, look, I'm a travel writer. I've been writing for these people. Maybe I can do something with you. And so my travel writing started to pick up. And the pandemic obviously shut everything down, and travel writing suffered almost as much as cruising itself did, because if people can't go, people don't want to read about it in the same way either. But as things opened up again after the pandemic, and I was going out on loads of trips and writing stories, I then came across Holland America Line again. And I remember, this is something I'd never forgotten. I remember making friends with the Medispa doctor in one of the ships at Royal. And the thing with the Spa team is they don't work for the cruise line. They work for their own company. And so they go between cruise lines. And I remember this Medispa doctor saying to me, I hope they send me back to Holland America. And I said, why do you want that? She said, they're the best ships. And I'd never forgotten that. It was just that one person who had mentioned Holland. I didn't even know how to pronounce Holland America's ship names. And so it wasn't really a line that was on my radar, but she had just planted that seed that she'd been through all of these different cruise lines, and that was the one that she wanted to go back to. So I thought, okay, that's on my radar now. And then I saw that they didn't have a cruise director. They had a cruise and travel director. And I was intrigued by, what is this? What's the difference? And the difference was that they don't want their cruise director to be running around doing game shows where you ask people to take their bras off and show them in your face. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for people who deliver the destination. And I realized that's my sort of cruise. I'm a travel writer that loves cruise. It matches. And so that was how the relationship started there. And that was a fantastic fit.
It's not like you became the cruise director and then moved up to cruise and travel director on Grand Voyages. That there wasn't a progression. That's what you started as.
Yeah, so I only ever did one role at Holland America. The progression, I suppose, was the complexity of the voyages. So I started with a season in Alaska, just doing 1 week cruises. Very quickly, I think it became apparent that wasn't really my forte, to be doing short cruises, rinse and repeat. I am much better at those longer, slower voyages where you get deeper relationships with the guests. It becomes very personal. We go to more places, and so it becomes more about researching the place and sharing those deeper stories. And so after my first contract, which was in Alaska, I then went straight into long voyages, and I did a cruise which was circumnavigating Australia and New Zealand. And that was it for me. I just absolutely fell in love with what they do. It's a different sort of cruising. It does very much focus on the destination, but it allows you the time to deliver the destination in a way that's meaningful to the people on board, because the group of people on board will always be changing. You know, this year you're traveling with this group of people. Next year, some different people are going to be there. And I like the fact that every time I do one of those extensive cruises, I can make it from scratch personally for those people.
As a cruise and travel director on Grand Voyages, you circumnavigated Australia and New Zealand twice. South America once. You cruise to Antarctica and up the Amazon River, as well as Mediterranean and Northern Europe. Its itineraries. Almost everything in that sentence or paragraph was on my bucket list. So give us some highlights of all those wonderful locations.
I like the sound of your bucket list. It's a good bucket list. Oh my. Let's start in Australia. I fell in love with Australia. It was one of those places that was high on my bucket list, and I didn't think I'd really get to go there, and then to spend so much time there has just been amazing. I fell in love with Melbourne in particular. Everybody talks about Sydney, and Sydney is great, but there's something special about the other cities that are just a bit smaller than Sydney and just a little bit cheaper than Sydney, and potentially, not that I want to upset any Sydney-siders, potentially a little friendlier than Sydney. And that's how I felt in Melbourne, a city on the beach. That's how I felt in Hobart, which is in Tasmania. The sense I got in Hobart was it's Sydney 50 years ago without the money. And so it felt real. I loved it. I really enjoyed Perth. Now, if you're going to circumnavigate Australia, you'll end up in Fremantle Port, which is right on the west coast, and it's the port for Perth. You take an easy train ride in, and you get to the main city. And I went to the Perth Mint, which is where they used to make all of the coins. And you can now tour it. They give you there's a workshop in there where they show you how they minted the coins. And so I found very interesting. At Cairns, which is now we've flipped to the other corner of Australia, northeast, so northern Queensland. That was very interesting. Very hot, very humid, but to get that rainforest feel. And it just reminds you how big Australia really is. From that very condensed pocket where almost all Australians live, in that sort of southeast corner, Melbourne, going into Sydney, going up to Brisbane. That sort of corner is where most Australians live. And then you go out of there, it becomes very sparsely populated, but so varied and different in terms of what you'll see, from the animals, from the plant life, to then suddenly going around the top to Darwin and round to Broome, Exmouth areas, and you see nothing. It's barren. It's orange with just dried out sand, and I love the variety. But something I always say to people when they say to me, "I want to go to Australia," I say, "I'm sure you do, but you really want to go to New Zealand." I am so pleased that I went to New Zealand, because if I had planned a trip, I probably would have put all of my budget into Australia, and I would have had very little money left to go and enjoy New Zealand. New Zealand should not be overlooked.
And that would be a mistake.
That would be a huge mistake. New Zealand is both gorgeous, it's beautiful, and it's more compact than Australia, obviously. And so you can actually see a lot more in the time that you've got. And so I highly recommend getting New Zealand high up your list. Tag Australia onto a New Zealand trip rather than the other way around. And I would suggest the South Island of New Zealand is the place to go for nature lovers. The North Island for city. And so depending on what you're looking for, ideally you can do a bit of both, but depending on what you're looking for, that's the general split of New Zealand.
So for us with a jam-packed bucket list like we have, you can do Australia and New Zealand together.
Yeah, and I'd recommend that. There are some great cruises that go from Sydney. Sydney and Brisbane are your two to look at, really, if you're looking to leave from Australia, or look for cruises that go from Auckland, because there are plenty of cruises that go from Auckland, which is the North Island of New Zealand, and it's the main city, even though it's not the capital. It's the biggest city.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go down the coast of New Zealand, across the Tasman Sea, and then finish in Sydney. Not all go as far as Melbourne. And if I could pick out a great itinerary, I would suggest that you do try and get to Melbourne. And if you can, get across to Adelaide. Now, that's rarer. To get to Adelaide, usually you're looking at cruises which are circumnavigating Australia, but there are some which will do New Zealand, and then they'll do Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide. And that, for me, is the ideal highlights package.
Talk about Antarctica.
Oh, what a place. I was so lucky with the weather in the skies and in the seas when I was in Antarctica. Now, this is the thing which people are nervous of with Antarctica. It's getting there. And people say it's either the Drake Lake or the Drake Shake. And it wasn't either, really, for me, but it was nearer to the Drake Lake. It was a fairly comfortable 2.5, 3 meter swells, which on a main normal sized cruise ship is very, very comfortable. It's something that the ship can handle perfectly well. And we had very comfortable journey across. When we got to Antarctica, it was grey, it was heavy on the sky, and we didn't know what we were going to see. And then it was as if the doors opened and this grey lifted and opened up, and we saw blue skies, and we saw for miles. I was astonished. It was obviously snow all around us, but people were wearing fairly light clothing because the sun was out. It was so bright. It was just glorious. And we had a few days in Antarctica, moving around, seeing different channels. We saw the Chilean research base, we saw the American research base, and then on that final day, just as we were starting to get ready to leave, the weather pulled in again. The grey clouds folded back down because Antarctica is pretty mountainous, actually. And so that you can see the weather pulling itself down the mountains. And it was as if it was closing the curtains behind us as we then headed back out to head back up to South America. You couldn't write it better. It was a perfect experience.
Now, what did you go there on?
I went on Volendam, so a Holland America ship, Volendam.
Oh, okay.
And Volendam is one of their smallest ships. So there are two sister ships in the R class remaining, and that's Volendam and Zaandam. And they have another ship that goes there as well. I think the Oosterdam goes to Antarctica on a sort of a more regular 2-week run. That's a slightly larger ship. I would recommend to people go to Antarctica on the smallest ship that you can afford.
Totally changing location. You went up the Amazon River. Daniel, this is an interesting contrast, because just a couple of weeks before your episode, I had a gentleman who worked like you for a long time on cruise ships. And he did various jobs. He started off a videographer and didn't know anything about video. And then he became a cruise consultant on Holland America. And he never was a cruise director, but he worked 20 years on various cruise ships. But he was a generation before you. So he worked in the 80s, 90s, and the O's. And when I asked him about places that he traveled to, he also traveled to Antarctica, and he also traveled up the Amazon. He called it down the Amazon River. So a lot of similarities. So it's interesting to contrast your perspective, a more contemporary perspective of being staff on a cruise ship, and his perspective. But it is interesting that you guys went to some of the same places.
Well, especially if he did Holland America, this is one thing that I think Holland stands out for, and it is their itineraries. They are all about the destination. Their ships are relatively simple. They're not flashy. I actually really appreciate them for that. They're classy, they're elegant, they're traditional, because the real star of the show is where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
And the Amazon is one of those places. You can't go on most cruise ships. If you look at the market these days, most cruise ships won't fit in. And so to be able to go up a river in a cruise ship is a bit of a rare treat. That is one of the most famous rivers in the world. And I had so many pinch myself moments on that journey, thinking I learnt about this river when I was 8 years old in school.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought I would see it, let alone be in this river. I couldn't believe it. It was so different from what I imagined. And I would go back in a heartbeat to see more.
Now, did you?
There are
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
there are some places along the river that I had never heard of. And one in particular that I would really like to spend more time is a place called Parentins.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I want to go back to Parentins is they've got an annual festival. It's a bit like their version of Carnival.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called the Bowie Bomber Festival. And it's a festival where the whole town comes together and they retell this story each year of, essentially it's a legend, it's a myth of a bull that a husband has his pregnant wife, she's got cravings for the bull's tongue, but specifically it must be the bull's tongue of the ranch owner's favorite bull. And so he has to go in and he has to kill the cow or kill the bull and take its tongue for his wife. And then they bring a shaman to bring this bull back to life, and miraculously the bull is returned to life. And every year they retell this story, and there's a blue team and a red team, and they compete for who can tell it better. And they've built a stadium specifically for the telling of this story. The story never changes. It is the same every year. And there are these two teams that just compete year in, year out. And I want to go when they've got this on. I want to go and be in that stadium.
Now, traveling the Amazon River, I'm going to guess you got to eat some exotic food. Did you?
Yes. Though the funny thing is, you don't realize that you're eating exotic food sometimes. When you're eating locally, it's just food. And sometimes I find it's best not to ask too many questions about what you're eating. If it looks okay and it tastes okay, it's okay. I've been very fortunate that I've only had food poisoning once. And I'm not sure it was really food poisoning. I think the food that I ate came with an extra gift of a live creature. And I think that live creature enjoyed living inside of me for a little while. And that...
No, you have to say more, Daniel.
That was Peru. I had, what's it called? Oh my gosh, it's gone. It's the raw fish. Well, it's not raw fish. I think it's cured the fish. And I have to say, I really like it. It's clearly, well, I don't think it was that. What I think happened is I went out for this meal and I had a local drink with the meal because I saw other people nearby, other tables in this outdoor restaurant, and they had this purple juice. And I thought, well, when in Rome, or in this case, when in Peru, I will do as they do, and I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to see what it's like. And so I had this purple drink that I wish I knew what it actually was, because I would know not to have it again. But I had that, and it was very sweet. It was sort of warm, actually, and I quite liked it. I stopped drinking it when I noticed that a fly was in my mouth. And I think it was the fly that caused the problems for me rather than the food. But yeah, that was
Ceviche,
that was
okay.
problematic. It was ceviche that I was eating. Yeah. Oh, and the drink. The drink is called chicha de jora.
So it's alcohol
It's a
drink.
corn drink. It's sort of a
Very okay.
fermented corn drink.
Okay. Okay.
Very low alcohol. Yeah. It's about 2%. It flies love it.
Talk about your writing and podcasting. So you became an acclaimed travel writer. Talk about that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really got into travel writing. It's something which combines all of my interests. I love sharing stories with people and communicating ideas and inspiring people to give things a go, get out of their comfort zones, experience more of the world. And so travel writing was a natural place for me to sit with that. And I write for various newspapers and magazines on a freelance basis, which I really enjoy because freelance writers are the ones who actually go traveling. The staff writers, they've got a job. They have to sit at the desk. They've got work to do. And so they'll cover more of the news related stories of travel, whereas the freelancers are the ones who are actually going out, spending a week here, spending 2 weeks there, experiencing the place, and then working out how do you condense this into a story that sells the place and sells the true essence of the place. And that's something I absolutely love. I'm on the board of the British Guild of Travel Writers, which is the only accredited organization of travel writers in the UK, which is great because then you've got this community of people around you who are doing similar work to you, are interested in similar things. We can share advice and experiences. They organize some good trips as well, which again just encourage people to get out and see more of the world. And then I thought what I was doing on the ships, especially with Holland America, I used to do these events every evening, which were essentially a Q&A with Daniel. And what would we be talking about? We'd be talking about wherever we were going next. And people would come along and ask their questions. I'd started off with a bit of a chit chat about the place and some of my tips and some of the logistical stuff. And one of the things that sort of surprised all of us with that is more people would come to half an hour of very informal chit chat about a port of call than would go to a main evening show.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that means that people want this sort of information. It's valuable to people. And why should we limit this to people who are currently on board a cruise ship? Because people like to plan their trips before they get there. People want to talk about what's going on. People like to anticipate their vacations. And so that's why I started the Destination Unlocked podcast, because that way we can talk about a place, we can give all of that useful information before you even get there. So you're giving yourself a head start. And even better than that, it doesn't have to be me telling you the information, because I can actually talk to somebody who knows the place like a local, because they are a local. And so that was the main focus for the Destination Unlocked podcast. Was I would be facilitating locals sharing their part of the world. And so most of the people that I've spoken to on the podcast are local tour guides, or they've run their own company. Some people are what I would call professional travelers. Some people are travel writers like me, but they've got an area that they really specialize in. And so it's been an amazing opportunity to essentially just chat with people about places that they love in the world.
So when did the podcast start?
So it's been a work in progress since October 2025, and it actually launched in December 2025. So it's something which, and you'll know this better than anyone. There's a huge amount of work that goes into setting up a podcast.
Oh, yes.
And so I didn't want to launch it until it was ready and at a quality which matched what listeners deserve, but also what the people who are giving me their time to share their part of the world, they deserve it to be good too. So I didn't want to rush it. And so I took a good 2 and a bit months of just prepping and recording and editing before we even got going.
Well, listeners, check it out. Destination Unlocked. Daniel, it's on all podcast platforms.
Yeah, wherever you
Okay.
usually get your podcasts,
Okay.
wherever you're listening to
Okay.
this.
Let's talk about the future. Any near-term travel plans?
Right now, my travel plans are in London. I haven't actually spent a winter in London for years, and so right now I'm in London for a little bit, and it's an interesting transition moment for me in that I'm no longer cruising on board ships full time, and so now's the time where I'm exploring what is next. I would love to do a little bit of guest speaking on some cruises. That's something that a lot of people have suggested to me because of the work that I was doing at Holland America Line, which was largely giving speeches and giving destination talks. So maybe I'll be able to do a bit of that.
If I can jump in, I have had quite a few guests on the podcast who that's what they do. They give talks on cruise ships.
It's a good gig.
Yeah.
Right.
And you seem to be perfect for it. What
Thank you.
Given what I've learned, about you in this conversation, that just has your name written all over it.
Let them know.
What is one place by land or sea you are most grateful for having visited?
Ooh, gosh. That is so challenging because I pinch myself every day that I've had the opportunity to see so many places. Where am I most grateful? I think the place that comes to mind is Bhutan in the Himalayas. And I think the reason Bhutan comes to mind is it's a place that I would never have heard of, a place that I would never have booked myself, and essentially through circumstance of taking a few opportunities over the years that I didn't know where they were leading, I ended up with this invitation to go and write a story about the reopening of an ancient trail, a mountain trail that stretches from one end of the country to the other over all of these mountain passes, the Trans-Bhutan Trail. And I'm not a big hiker. I'm certainly no mountain climber. And I was so nervous about that trip. I was nervous about that trip for the health aspect, the fitness aspect. It's high up in the Himalayas, so I wasn't sure, was I going to get mountain sickness? I was worried about the food. Was it going to be too spicy? Was I going to get food poisoning? Was I going to be able to eat? I was worried about the accommodation. We were doing a bit of hotels, but we were also camping. And I was worried about being eaten to death by wild dogs. There was just so much going on in my head. Yeah. And then when I was there,
I was getting ready to say a lot to think about.
All fitted in. And it was one of those moments which reminded me both how big the world is, but how friendly the world is. I really couldn't have come from anywhere more different than this tiny country right up in the heights of the Himalayas. And yet once I landed in that airport, which is quite the landing, by the way, I felt like I'd been there already. I felt relaxed. I felt like I knew what I was doing. I felt like I could go up to somebody and ask them a question if I needed to ask something. I didn't feel threatened. And that was something that I realized throughout my time in Bhutan. It's such a warm country in terms of their culture. The people are so polite, so welcoming, so receptive to visitors because they don't have that many visitors. It's something which they've been very careful to limit how much tourism really takes hold. They know they need some tourism, but they don't want to overdo it. And they've been very responsible with how much they do. And so I felt like I was getting a very authentic glimpse of life in Bhutan. And I was getting it without crowds in a way which was at a pace that was what I call a human pace. We were walking to places. You can't get more human pace than that because you can only go as fast as your legs can take you. And that gives you time to look around you and appreciate what you're seeing. And even though by the end of the second day, my knees were searing with pain, it was absolute agony from all of the downhill walking of the mountain. Downhill is the worst. Oh my gosh, give me uphill any day of the week. Oh, it's excruciatingly painful.
Really?
But then when you get into this very modest farmhouse and they give you a butter tea and a banana from their own tree, and you're just relaxing and looking around and thinking, my gosh, this is the same world. And I've never seen anything like this before, but this is the same world. It was amazing.
Yeah, sounds fascinating. How many were with you?
It was just me and my guide.
Oh, you're kidding.
Which is a little intimidating. Yeah. So
Okay,
one of the things in
I guess I
Bhutan,
missed that when you started telling this story. Wow.
I think that's why I was so nervous about it.
Wow. Anything left on your cruising or travel bucket list?
There's always stuff left. I would like to see more of Africa. I think that's very high on my list now. I've seen a tiny pocket of Africa and loved what I saw. I went to Banjul in the Gambia, and fantastic place. It's somewhere which splits the room when it comes to cruises. I've heard people say both things. They've had the best day of their cruise there, and other people raise an eyebrow and say, "Why did we go here?" And I want those people who ask, "Why did we go here?" I want them to have another look at it, because I can see 100 reasons to go there. But the thing that I can also see is that they haven't quite worked out how to tell you that. And that's very honest. That's something I really like about it. It's not got any of the marketing gloss of the Caribbean or North America or even a lot of South America. It's not got the branding side of it. And that connects with what I really like. It's real. And I love places that are real and honest. And I don't think you can get more honest than places which haven't worked out how to sell themselves. And so the fact that they're not focused on the tourists. It's not that they're unwelcoming to tourists, because I found them to be extremely welcoming to tourists. But the tourists are there doing their thing, and the locals are there doing their thing. And the locals aren't going to change what they're doing because there happen to be some Westerners around. And I love that.
Daniel, before we let you go, we usually ask our guests some light or fun cruise questions. So the first question, this is an easy one. How do you spend your me time?
On a cruise ship, you don't have me time.
Although it doesn't sound like you have much. But even at home, I mean, I know you write and you cruise and you podcast. You got to have a little time left for just Daniel.
I am astonishingly bad at relaxing, but when I do relax, it's usually at the theatre. I'm either at the theatre or, if the weather's nice, I love to be outside.
What's your favorite cruise drink and favorite cruise food?
Favorite cruise drink? Water. Water a la ship, as I like to call it. And you'll always see me, whichever ship we happen to be on together, you'll see me, if I'm up at the buffet, I will be carrying 2 glasses of water with one hand and my food with the other hand. It is so important to stay hydrated wherever you are. And so I'm always on the water. I'm not a big alcohol drinker, so I just I stay hydrated, because especially given that, generally I've been working on the ships, I can't lose my voice and I can't lose my temper. And water helps with both.
Very good. Very good.
Food. Having just come off the Seabourn cruise, the fish was outstanding. It was fresh, from the ports that we were going to, um, one of the things that they love their chefs to do is actually go out to market. You don't get fresher than that. You eating what the locals are eating, and they prepare it so well. That was a real treat. It was so consistently good, but also so varied. Every meal was something new and different and exciting, and I'm gonna have a hard time eating elsewhere.
Is Seaborn the one that has the nonstop caviar?
They do have a thing with caviar. Yes, I did start to mock that slightly. I used to say everything came with fish eggs.
Yeah, I first tried caviar. When I started cruising, my first cruise was on a Royal Caribbean ship, and this was way back in '88. And at the time, they had very grand midnight buffets. And the midnight buffet included caviar. Now, I'm not saying it was top shelf caviar, but it was caviar. And that was my first time tasting it. And I fell in love with it. Haven't had it since on a cruise ship, although on that one luxury cruise I said I took last year, Explorer Journeys, they didn't. They had caviar in a lot of the dishes. I mean, it's not like they served caviar by itself, but they did have it in a number of their meals in specialty restaurants. As a cruise director, what was your favorite incident or happening or whatever as a cruise director on various ships?
There are two which come to mind. One for a positive reason, one for a negative reason, but it was funny. The positive was a man had become a widower, and he had booked a cruise with his wife. His wife had passed away, obviously, before the cruise happened.
Oh, wow.
And his family had really encouraged him to take the cruise. They said, you need it. It's something for you. You'll benefit from it. And he was so nervous about taking the cruise. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things which I really focused on in the way that I did the cruise director role is it's personal. It's about getting to know people properly, and it's about understanding their needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I got chatting with him on the first night of the cruise and could see what he needed. It was, we spoke for an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
And he offloaded so much, but he made it so clear how I could make that cruise special for him. And we gave him an amazing cruise, and it was such a good cruise for him that he booked 2 more cruises whilst he was still on the ship, and he wrote to the president of the company to personally thank what I had done for him. And I was like, wow, that's astonishing. That's just taking a bit of time with somebody made such a difference. So that's the positive. That's why I think what crew do on board cruise ships is so meaningful, because if you take the time to understand people who are around you, you can really change a significant moment in their year. The funny when it went wrong was at Royal Caribbean. There's an event, I don't know if they still do it, but there was an event on the pool deck called World's Sexiest Man. And it was hosted by the cruise director. And so this one week I was hosting World's Sexiest Man. And at the beginning of World's Sexiest Man, I used to give a demonstration of the sort of thing we were looking for. And it was a bit of a ridiculous dance. It involved unbuttoning my shirt. It involved gyrating the hips. And it was just a bit of silly fun. Cheap, but silly fun. It wasn't offensive. Or it certainly wasn't intended to be offensive. Anyway, after this particular week where we did it, I received a phone call from the guest services saying, you have to come down. There's a lady who wants to speak to you. I said, oh, okay, what does she want to speak about? And they said, you need to come down. She's crying.
Uh-oh.
I said, but what? And they said, it's something you've done. I said, but what have I done? Anyway, I went down, and this lady was really, she was irate. She was really upset. And so I went over and I was speaking to her, and she said that I had ruined her children's childhood. And I said, what do you mean I've ruined your children's childhood? And she said, well, I was on the pool deck half an hour ago, 40 minutes ago, whatever it was, and you were doing this show up there. I said, oh, yes, world's sexiest man. And she said, I have worked so hard to protect my children from these sorts of things. And in 1 minute, you have ruined their childhood. And
Wow.
I was sort of stunned. I couldn't believe it because, I'm not saying it's the classiest bit of entertainment in the world. It's not, but it's not the worst thing in the world either. And there are also so many places around the ship where she could have gone instead with her child. And so I tried to, gently sort of bring the conversation to a nice conclusion. And I asked, did you leave the pool deck and maybe do something else in the time? And she said that she did. And I agreed that sounded like it was a really good solution. And I thought the conversation was coming to a pretty good end. And then suddenly she got all worked up again, and she shouted at me, I'm just trying to do a better job for my kids than your mother did for you.
Oh, wow.
and I thanked her for her time. And I just remember going behind the desk to the back office of guest services, and everybody was open mouthed. So sort of, wow, what just happened? And I remember I phoned my mum and I said, I just want to let you know. You meet all sorts, and sometimes you don't know what's going on in somebody else's day. But that happened 10 years ago, something like that, and it's still with me.
Well, maybe that's the answer to my next question. My next question is, what's your most wonderful, which that certainly wasn't, or memorable, which that might have been, or funniest, or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
I mean, that is a contender, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Certainly unmemorable.
I've had.
I think she should have been embarrassed.
Yes, maybe she was. I don't know. She never let on. I think I've had more than my fair share of embarrassing moments over the years, and I'm one of those people who I'm okay to laugh at myself. I think it's one of the best skills you can have when you're working with people. This again was at Royal Caribbean, and we used to have a parade. I'm sure they still have parades on their ships. We used to have a parade on Navigator of the Seas, and it was a circus parade. And this was in my very first contract. And I was honored with the position of a clown. And the best part of being a clown was that these were giant clowns, and you had a big blow-up inflatable head, which is a huge ball, and you had to hold it inside the costume with a big wooden stick, a bit like a broomstick.
Uh-huh.
And so you couldn't be seen at all. You were totally inside this costume. And the clown's stomach was this big hula hoop ring. And so there were two clowns, and I was one of them. My friend, also called Daniel, was the other. And we used to get ready in the cruise director's office, and they were really hot inside those clown outfits. So you'd go up, but you'd take your uniform off, and you'd sort of wear very light, maybe a t-shirt or something inside, and you'd hold on to your big inflatable head. And then we'd be led out for the parade. And the great thing about being in these clown outfits is nobody expected you to know the dance moves because clowns don't need to know the dance moves anyway, surely. And so I really didn't know what was going on in the parade. And I couldn't see what was going on in the parade either because I was stuck inside this clown. What I was aware of was that halfway along the Royal Promenade, there's a bridge. And anybody who knows the Voyager class of ships will know the bridge. And the clown is too tall to go under the bridge, so you have to duck. On this one particular week, this fateful week, I decided to add a bit of flair and pizzazz to my crossing of the bridge. And so I added a spin just before going under the bridge. Unfortunately, that spin meant that I lost my balance. And so as I came out of coming from under the bridge, I fell over and I fell onto a child. And I don't know, this child must have been 7 or 8 years old. And naturally, you don't even think, it's just instinctive. If you're falling, you're going to put your hands out to stop yourself from falling. The issue was my hands came out of the clown's stomach. And so this poor boy just saw these 2 skinny little white arms emerge quite urgently from this giant clown's stomach. He was so scared, he didn't even scream. He was stunned into silence. And I was removed from the parade from that week.
Wow. What a way to start.
Yeah.
But it certainly didn't affect your long-term progression, that's for sure.
It hasn't hurt my career so far, but I haven't had any more dancing roles.
Finally, Darren, you have an oddball question. I call it oddball because it really doesn't necessarily have anything to do with cruising. But it's for your fans and friends. So let me welcome Daniel's fans and friends who are listening. We hope your fans have enjoyed what they have heard at the Joy of Cruising podcast and will come back for future episodes. Share one thing that my listeners and your fans and friends don't know about Daniel.
That's very hard. The challenge with doing grand voyages where people sail with you for 133 days at a time is there's very little left. They've seen it all. I think the thing that surprises me, that surprises people about me, is that I never had any interest in travel or holidays or vacations at all. I was the person in my family who was so happy to not go away, to not have to pack up the cases. Didn't bother me at all. I don't go in the swimming pool. I don't get excited about any of that stuff. My sister, yeah, she loves it. My parents, they love it. It was never something that interested me. And so on family vacations, when we were younger, you'll see pictures in the family albums of everybody else going swimming and dressed up in their holiday outfits. And you'll see me wrapped up in towels head to toe so that I don't get any sunburn, reading a book. It's been so surprising how my career and my life has panned out so far, because nobody would have written it this way. And so I think the thing that, and maybe my closest to my fans do know this. I don't know. But I suppose the thing that I would answer the oddball is my life so far has been unplanned. However well planned it looks, I had no idea what was happening.
Very good. Very good. Daniel, it has been great talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast. All the best to you and in your future endeavors. I sure hope that I can check off the bucket list some of the locales that you have mentioned today. As I like to say, we will see you on the ocean.
Thanks, Paul. I'll see you there.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, Use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.